Hank. We did it. That's very Dora the Explorer. We did it.
Hello.
Hello. So who's in the captain's chair this week?
Reporting for duty, gentlemen.
Oh, I love it. Guys, welcome back to Pencil, not Pencil, Pencil, T-O. Pencil, your favorite weekly, weeknight, Wednesday live cast brought to you by expert cartoonists. That's right. I'm getting goosies thinking about it. Real live cartoonists in the flesh who are here to answer your questions and to talk about topical topics. Yeah, very fresh. My name is JAMAR NICHOLAS. I'm your first host. I am Philadelphia born and raised, a member in good standing of the National Cartoonist Society. I'm actually on the board. Look at that. And also the Philadelphia chapter chair. On top of all that stuff, I'm also a graphic novelist. Leon the Extraordinary is my series at Scholastic under the graphics banner. Go cop it, why don't you? Hey, just in, you guys. The next volume in the series, Leon Worst Friends Forever, drops October 1st. You know what to do. Pre-order that. But guys, I would be remiss if I did not introduce my co-host. He is the man in the captain's chair. He is also do the belt motion, the world heavyweight champion of webcomics. He goes by God, it's Stone Cold Steve Conley.
Hello, guys. It's so good to see you. Last week was great. I missed you guys so much. I didn't realize how much. I thought, I could go another week.
I missed you. Yeah.
I couldn't go another week.
I could go 2-3 weeks.
Steve, what do you do?
I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age, which you can read at middleagecomic.com. It's on Webtoons and Tapas and Go Comics. I also make role-playing game stuff. So if you play D&D,
yes,
you can check out my stuff. It's called intoximancy.com, deathdealing.com. It's silly. It's fun. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention. I think I would if I didn't mention the Cocoa, the Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs.
Yes.
Tower Power Man of the Hour, Too Sweet to Be Sour, the ever-loving Mike Manley.
Hello, ladies and joins.
Well, hello.
See.
Newsflash. Michael Manley, what do you do, pray tell?
I make stacks of cartoons.
Nice. Respect the stack, yo.
Just as a stack.
I'll hold it up a little bit higher, Mike. You know that.
Amazing.
Yo, that should come with a pillowcase for all those that slept on it. Don't sleep.
Those are some Phantom pencils.
I love it, Mike.
So I draw the Phantom.
Yes.
And I draw Judge Parker. And I have worked, and some people have told me I have drawn their childhood.
You drew my
childhood. Horrible, scary comics that scarred innocent children.
One of my favorite things is back in the day, Mike and I would be in the same vicinity at a lot of Comic Cons. And it's always a marvel, no pun intended, to watch Mike work. And at one point, somebody came up with like this clear, like almost like he had a handcuff to the wrist, like an acrylic case full of those Marvel 92 playing cards, like the collectible cards. Like those cards were hot in the early 90s. And the guy like steam came out of it. And he opened it and he put the whole brick in front of Mike Manley. And Mike was just like and Mike, like, I don't know, how does it feel when somebody like gives you like a stack of stuff to sign? Do you feel like, holy shit, I've done a lot of work? Or like, I don't want to sign all this? How do you feel when you get that?
I don't have a problem signing. There was a guy or somebody in Baltimore, and what they would do is they would send their little charming, innocent daughter to my table, and she'd like, Mr. Manley, will you sign these little cards for me? And then, and then like, okay, you sign, I don't know, like 50 cards, whatever.
50?
You turn around like, Mr. Manley, will you sign some more stack of comics for me? And then, like, after like the third time, I'm like, your dad has to bring them the next time.
Right. Oh, he's hiding behind the Lady Death statue.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, I don't mind signing. I think we talked about this before.
Yeah.
Some people, I think Neil Adams sort of started doing the like, everybody sign, and you got to pay me money to sign. And I don't know. I mean, if when I signed stuff in the past for like the QVC, and I don't do the CGC thing, I don't do that where I have to sign some form or whatever. Like, I'm not signing any form. I don't know what that means. Right. I don't want to be involved in this whole thing. But I don't mind signing anybody's autograph for somebody. I mean, even if you have, within reason, you have a stack of stuff because you supported me, you bought my books, so I don't mind signing them.
What about Mike? I'm playing devil's advocate tonight. What about somebody shows up with like a stack of the same issue of Batman, like Brokeback Batman? It was like 9 of them.
Wow, gee, I don't remember. There was Nightfall. And then there was Brokeback Mountain Batman. I don't remember that issue.
That was a variant. Yeah. So does that change it? Like, kind of know where this is going.
If it's an individual, I don't mind. Within reason, with a store, I wouldn't mind. If I was going to the store and they were hosting me, I wouldn't mind. But in fact, there was a sort of related to this. I saw a thread on Facebook where somebody was talking about sort of getting rid of Artist Alley or setting it up, but like, why are people drawing sketches of these characters that they don't know? In the old days, people used to, draw sketches for free, but fans ruined that because somebody would draw a sketch and then immediately someone would go and sell it, right?
Like immediately.
I've done that. I've actually drawn sketch. Someone will come up at the end of the show and like, please, can you, and it's usually a crappy sketch, but you got 5 seconds, you're packing up your stuff and whatever. But I've seen some of those on eBay. So I think most artists are happy to draw something for their fan. I doubt. But then you feel like a chump if you drew it for somebody and then they go get, $100 on eBay for it.
Or also with that is I've seen that happen like the same day you did it. Like we could be at dinner and then somebody be like, yo, look at this. Yo, I just drew that this afternoon.
Well, I saw this thing when the last Indiana Jones was coming out. And you've got these people that like know that Harrison Ford is going to go to this hotel. And so they follow his fucking car and they wait until he gets out. And they're like, Harrison, look over here. And then they're like trying to hold up something and get a photo. Or, if he stops and he signs it, then they want a photo of him
signing.
Signing.
Like a proof of life type of thing. Right?
Exactly. And I'm like, that's what ruins things. That this kind of touches on what we will be talking about, I think, in a way tonight. But I always say, like, greed is the worst spice, right? It's the spice that kind of ruins everything, right? Because you'll have somebody who'll do something, they want to give back. I saw an interview with Paul Lynde, and after his plays, he would have a review line or whatever. He would sign autographs for everybody, right? Because he said that he felt that these people had come and supported him, and they watched him on Family Feud and all that stuff. So he was happy, right? And I saw another interview with Jonathan Harris, the guy who used to play Dr. Smith. He answered all of his fan letters.
Yeah.
Right? Anybody who wrote to him got an answer back, right? But I think greed is the thing that kind of ruins it because, okay, I'll sign your stack of 25 issues of Dark Hawk, right, or whatever. But then if I know immediately you're going to go like, ha ha, I think that kind of, we kind of fight that all the time, because there's people who want to do stuff, who do stuff for charity or just to give back to someone who supported them. But then there's other people out there that are always kind of looking for some kind of way to like game the system.
And it kind of like, it pollutes the water too, right? It's like, somebody who actually, would never take a razor to their sketchbook and try to like flip the pages on eBay. You know what I mean? It kind of like, messes it up for the next person that just really wants you to give them a sketch.
I heard that in Europe, no, I don't know if it's the same now, but it used to be that everybody drew for free. So they drew for their fans for free. They didn't, not like in America.
Right.
But I don't know if that's the same. Now they charge people for sketches, but that's where we're at. That's where we're at. We've got the greed factor on so many fronts, affecting what people feel like they want to do, how they want to participate. And I think just even the conventions, there's a lot of greed in the conventions. I'm hearing people complaining that they can't get a table. Nobody writes them back. And the tables at these shows, the big shows, are pretty expensive. In fact, the hotel is probably the most expensive thing. So I was having some conversations with some friends of mine this week, and they were saying, like, basically, if you don't comp my table and you don't comp my hotel room, why do I want to go to the show?
Right.
Because I'm part of the draw. Right.
No pun intended.
Exactly. And I could see that, I could see that, or give you a discount, right? If you got like 300 guests, maybe you can't afford to give everybody a hotel room, but have a block where, it's cheaper. Yeah.
And, just to the issue of, and we're probably going to touch on some of this stuff tonight, is that there's so much of so much these days, right? Remember just maybe even 20 years ago, there was probably like 5 big comic book conventions.
Right.
Now there's probably 15 or 20 or 25 or 30 shows. Yeah. And you saw it start to dip after, well, yeah, I'm being generous.
Yeah.
But, just like when the pandemic happened and a lot of these kind of like little shows just kind of withered away. And I remember saying, even though this isn't the greatest thing, I'm kind of happy to see some of that stuff dry up a little bit, because, if even from a creative standpoint, there's only so many things you can do in a calendar. You know what I mean? And also, I think that is diverting the fans' attention in their pockets. Their wallets getting real thin when, you have to somehow finance 7 shows in a year.
Well, you also have all of these, my friend and assistant, Lee Yang's been doing a lot of shows the last year. So you have just anime shows, different kinds of anime shows. You have ones that are more about like, almost like furry stuff. You have some that are like comics and anime and everything. You have some that are just kind of like sci-fi, or like the one that Steve goes to, that we're just gaming, right?
I like it. It's called the one Steve's goes to. I like that's what it's called. Yeah.
We're called nerds, Mike. We're called nerds.
Nerds. It seems like every state now has at least one major show, but several minor shows every year, right? So like all the way from like Boston all the way down to Florida, just about every state in the next couple months has a show.
Yeah.
But, I think our topic of the evening is going to probably tie in a little bit of what we're talking about in probably scary ways. So as we kind of ease our way back into our weekly live streaming schedule, we haven't taken on any guests yet. One thing that I'm loving about what we've been doing over the past year, is putting in really insightful content in between the guests, right? Because I say all the time, we don't need guests, right? That's gravy. You know what I'm saying? But we've had really cogent topics lately, and a lot of them have to do with the modern cartoonist or the modern artist. Or, yeah, we're glad you finally got into the big leagues. You got a uniform. You might be on the bench, or
got you turn it back.
That's right. Like, you might be on deck. Last time I watched baseball, there's all this new stuff. Like, the batter's helmet has this chin thing, like, that covers the side of their jaw. And have you seen the sliding mitt?
Is that jaw cam?
No, well, hold on. Well, yeah, like the new batter's helmet has a guard going across the cheek.
So they throw the ball and try to bean it. Hits the
right. And then I saw these on the Phillies game. They have sliding mitts. So if you're on base, you see these guys putting on these oven mitts, and when they run, they slide in with the mitts.
That's just not every kid's going to be buying sliding mitts.
The game is changing, y'all.
You just need to act where you're wearing like a ripped up old pair of pajamas and like some floppy beat up leather shoes, no cup, just free balling it to second base.
You said no cup. Wow, where are we going with this?
Mom's trying to get the tuna noodle casserole out of the oven. Can't find her oven mitts.
I'm sliding to third.
Why is your grass in my oven mitts?
I'm sliding to third, Ma. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Shout out to the Savannah Bananas. It's like a college team that's just like, they come out onto the field out of limousines, and it's all pomp and circumstance. It's great. But anyway, all that is to be said is, like, America's pastime has changed, right? And if you have sliding mitts in baseball, God knows what it's going to look like for art, right? So to that, our topic for tonight is the art career survival kit. And I know we've done a couple of things like this last year, or a little earlier in the year, last year. But I think this is always worth coming back to, because the goalposts keep moving. Sorry for all the sports analogy, but the goalposts.
I'm completely lost.
The paddle borders are the cutters.
They're askew.
Yes.
So maybe Steve, would you like to introduce our topic for the evening, and then we'll get started?
Yeah. I'm going to put it in terms everyone can understand.
Sorry.
Quidditch, and Starfleet. But we're talking about the survival kit, and basically what it takes to make it as a working cartoonist. That's how I interpret it when we're kicking it around. The idea that that the landscape is changing so quickly, and that the next few years are probably going to, and the pace at which it's changing seems to be increasing, and so, or speeding up. And then what do we need to do to prepare ourselves for it, so that we don't wake up tomorrow and find our website's offline, we're getting 505 errors, or the outlets that we have for our comics are gone. How do we stay ahead of those things, and how do we prepare ourselves, and how do we keep going? As Mike was talking about with all these people gaming the system, I often feel like what we're doing is sort of gaming the system. There's this huge impetus for us to be in cubicles somewhere, and we find a way to sneak away and have this life, and what it takes to have this kind of freelance life, or this kind of creative life. And
PC load letter. I got him with that one.
Yeah. That was a character in Beetle Bailey, I think.
He came in later. Yeah, I didn't mean to throw you off.
No. But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how do we survive now, and
it's what we talk about actually between ourselves. Normally through the week or the month, it sort of comes up again, and it goes around.
Yeah, and Mike often grounds this with a kind of very practical, like having seen the comic book industry and the comic strip industry through many periods, many ages, and so I don't know, digging into that seems to be like a good way to start the year.
Also, I think teaching, you're always would have a fresh flock of young people who want to, or dreaming, thinking about having that career. And I would say in the last, well, especially since the pandemic, things have really radically changed. And the changes are happening faster in the last 2 years, 3 years than before that. Because to me, there was always a change starting with the computer. That was the first real big change. Right? But now it's constantly, like you will read a headline today that, I read one yesterday, that Tumblr is going to sell all the stuff on Tumblr to some AI corporation to just scrub it. Just go ahead, scrub it. Take whatever you want. That's okay.
Sure.
Right? And every day, you almost weekly, you're reading that Apple's going to allow AI to scrub your phone, and your, Facebook's going to allow it. So, if you're a person who makes art for a living, you're constantly facing this slippery slope going up what I call art mountain, because like your career is like going up a mountain. Like you think you dream, that's where I want to be, up there where all my creative heroes are. And you usually start as a teenager. And for a long time in my career, everything was kind of the same. But it's not the same for the person who would be 17, 18, 19 today, even a year ago, than it is now.
So what's the key thing that if someone was going to is starting right now, let's say that if you're in college or maybe younger, when you're deciding that you've got your day job, or you're thankfully living at home for another little while, you've got kind of a safety blanket, a security blanket. What do you focus on?
I wrote down I was thinking about this. I wrote down some notes. So now you guys may agree with this, or you may have, or not, and you may have your own theories on this. So hearing all this stuff, like what Tyler Perry was talking about, like canceling his $800 million studio because of AI, and all this stuff rearing its ugly head in the last year, I think the first thing is self-assessment. No matter where you are on the path you want to go, it's self-assessment. You have to figure out, if, let's say, you want to be a professional cartoonist, or you want to be an illustrator, or you want to work in animation, or you want to do kids books, right? You want to do general illustration, or you want to do kids books. Every one of these directions requires a certain set of skills and a certain amount of time to try to achieve distance up the mountain, right? And so I think the self-assessment is very important, because the self-assessment is going to tell you, which is hard, and harder when you're younger.
Right.
I think it's easier when you're older. It's harder when you're younger, because you don't know what you need to know, and you don't know what you don't know, right? You kind of like, you learn that. Many students would learn that through 4 years of college, and then through their fourth year, they go like, "Oh man, I really need to know this other stuff," but they didn't teach me.
they didn't tell me or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And then part of that was maybe you didn't do enough self-assessment. And then part of that assessment is saying, well, I need certain skills. What schools offer me those skills? Demonstratively, you have to be able to look at that school and look at the teachers and look at the people that graduated from the school. And are they good or are they not good? Do you not know anything about the alumni? Do you not know anything about the teachers? Is it hard to find copies of their work? That tells me that's probably not a school you want to go to.
I don't know if this jumps into your notes, Mike, or gets ahead of us, but can you dig into when you say self-assessment? What do you see that meaning? What does that entail? What I mean, it's one thing to say I'm looking at my own work, looking at where I want to be. How would you break that down for someone who's never done it or doesn't have the perspective yet to do it? How do you approach that in your own work?
Okay, so self-assessment is a series of questions that you ask yourself. One would be, okay, let's just say what it is that you want to do. Okay, like if you want to be a comic book artist, do you want to be a comic strip artist? Do you want to draw funny stuff? Do you want to draw muscles, right? Things like that. Are you good at anatomy? Are you good at perspective? You know, if you're not good at those things, if you struggle with those things, you have to be honest with yourself. Then you can go to the next step, which is how do I build that skill set? And the thing is when people do music or they do sports or they do medicine, it becomes very obvious. Like if you cut practice every week, you usually suck when you play, right? And you mess up and they bench you or you're not on first string yet, you know, you're on second string. If you do that with music, your facility with the instrument doesn't really improve, right? It's really direct feedback. Like I'm trying to play this and it's not very good and I'm having a hard time. Art is really easy for people to kind of go like, yeah, my stuff is really that good. So part of the assessment is also having other people who are further along look at your work and give you feedback, and you take that to heart, because that also helps you, right? Because the thing is, if I just look at my career and look how I came along, there were no classes. I had no classes and I had no teachers. So I had to teach myself. And, you know, there's always gaps when you teach yourself, right? Sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes you have holes in your skill set. But the path was pretty straight. And now I could not tell a young person that the path would be straight because of things like AI, right? So AI it is already in Hollywood replacing people. It's already replacing people with paperback covers and things like that. So your path is going to change. And now it's going to change much more rapidly. Probably no one will work at one company for 40 years like people used to. You're not going to go work at Walt Disney and work there for 40 years unless you're working in concessions or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? So self-assessment is important because it helps you plan your path. And you're constantly assessing yourself while you're on that path, because like, oh, it's going to be wet, it's going to be dry, there's going to be, the weather conditions are constantly changing faster than artists used to have to deal with, right?
Yeah.
And part of the self-assessment is also assessing your personality type. Do you like change? Do you not like change? Do you not like working on a computer? Do you not like having to please other people? that's a really important, those are important questions to ask yourself, because I really believe if you don't have the right kind of personality, you're going to end up in a crisis because you're not going to be happy. It's going to be hard for you to progress. And so you might decide, well, you know, I don't want to do this job. I would rather do this other job. But any job you do that involves publishing, involves technology, is going to be rapidly changing right now. So,
Mike, I wanted to kind of go back to your assessment thing. And you know, hindsight's 2020, right? And one of the things I love about this being a panel of experts, let's just call it what it is that, and that's one of the parts that I love about when we have interviews and I ask that question about their origin stories. Everybody that's been in these chairs had almost like a ridiculous stubbornness to a goal. It's very rare that somebody's like, oh, I don't know, I was just walking down the street and I fell into this job. It doesn't work like that normally. So that self-assessment, you might be thinking to yourself, shit, when I was 21, I couldn't even figure out, you know, how to get to my classes half the time. What do you mean, what am I going to do with my career? But I think there are those special cases and those special people that know exactly what they want. And I think to kind of get to this point, you have to be one of those people. And so I agree with Mike's personality part. Like if you're kind of like a wet fish, I don't know. I don't really know how far your road's going to go. But if you can do some course correction early and go, okay, I get it. This is what I want to do. I listen to Mike Manley preach, and I think I know what I want to do now. I listen to the sermon. Right. But it's, you know, it's not as easy and it's not as hard as it also sounds. And what I was going to say about that to the not that hard part is we all know people who are like dumb stubborn about things. Hey, you know what? You really should get well, this is what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. But you know what, man? You know what? I've been here. You should go. No, I think those people might have the right track, even though we might not agree with them at the time. Like, I think that's that stubbornness kind of from the other end.
Well, you know, the thing is that even to draw a bad comic poorly is a lot of work.
Yes.
Right. And there's no way of getting away from the fact that you have to put a lot of time in to not only build your but you should be enjoying putting that time in. If it is such a pain, so unpleasurable to sit there and do it, then I would probably recommend that you find something else that you like, that you do have that feeling for, because I don't know anyone who, in my 40 years of working in comics, would sit there and go like, I hate this, I don't have any fun, but I'm going to sit down and draw 22 pages in 2 weeks. It's just like, I don't know anyone
right
who could do that. You know, that's why I always try to say that things like animation have a lot more moving parts. You can work in color, you can work in layout, you can just work in a lot of technical things. Again, part of the issue you face is the fact that now we have to be honest, because of AI, which is not going away, and the government is not coming in to save us. It's too far advanced. Everybody in Hollywood has that technology now. I just talked to a friend of mine last week, well-known cartoonist, working in animation for a long time. They're not hiring people right now. And I think the reason why he and I sort of agreed, the reason why we think they're not really approving a lot of things and hiring a lot of people, because they're trying to figure out how they can plug that technology in when they're bringing people back so they can eliminate as many people and use that technology. because it'll be cheaper. And every single one of the companies you work for, every single one is owned by a bigger company if it's not the big company. And every single one of them is driven by a board of directors whose main job it is to save money and maximize profit. And, I just read an article on Paramount and how they're struggling. And they just laid off a whole bunch of people. And the head guy was getting paid, like $20 million, goes, basically, see ya. Thanks for helping us get to this point where we can lay you off. So I think you have to, again, part of the self-assessment is, are you a person who can look logically and maturely, coldly at the business that you want to enter and understand that part of it? Because you have to. You have to understand that part as well as the passion and the creativity. Because if you don't understand the other part, you're going to knock your boat over right away. You're going to be thinking, oh, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm sweating blood for this company. I'm going to be rewarded. And suddenly everybody in that division is laid off. So again, that's part of your personality. You can't just look at it as like I love to draw, and I love to draw comics, and I've always wanted to draw comics, but I've always had that business side, even from a teenager reading about the business. So I think the hard part for some people is maybe they don't naturally have that, or maybe they don't have a teacher, or they don't have a mentor, or they don't have someone who says, you got to pay attention to that other part. Yeah, you can draw all the hair on Wolverine's arm. Yeah, you can draw this really cool, intense stuff. But you're a terrible businessman. You don't understand about business.
Assuming for a second that the personality equation is part of that, where you're saying that there's a type of kid a type of aspiring creator who doesn't have that ingredient, and they're kind of a lost cause. They don't have that's kind of what it seems like it is, right? There's sort of like, you don't have that secret sauce unless you can somehow have a 12-step program, submit yourself to the higher Mike Manley power and then come out of it on the other end where, now you have that missing piece. And let's assume, okay, there's a loss, there's people who don't have that missing piece and need that. And that's before everything else, you need that. Once you have that piece, what's the how? It seems like that's where we should focus, because the other thing is such a big lift that I don't know how, and we've got 90 minutes. How do we focus on the other part where it says, okay, you've got the chops, you've got that key. What do you do then? That's where the self-assessment comes in, because you can't even do the self-assessment if you have the first part, right? You're kind of saying that's a prerequisite.
Well, right. But I do think that part of the charge is upon you to be mature enough to be able to learn that, to be open enough, to open your eyes up to learn that. I didn't have anybody tell me that, but if I read something like a book on comics or interviews in the Comics Journal, it was pretty clear to me as a kid that Jack Kirby, who was creating all this stuff, wasn't getting as fair a deal as Stan Lee, right? And I'm just using that as one example. It was pretty clear to me that there were certain people in the business who did really well, like Frazetta, because he kept his art, and then they built that poster business that basically made him a zillionaire, right? And there were other people who didn't do that, and they suffered because of it. So I think that there were good stories and bad stories that were there to learn from if you were interested in learning, right? If you were like not what I have come to call Pikachu Fantasy Camp, which is a lot of people in college having fun, discovering themselves. Time is going by, burn a lot of money. maybe they're not quite as serious, and then usually they get spit out at the end, they don't do so well. Their skill set's not so good. It's a lot of competition. A lot of competition. And right now we have a field that has a lot of people that were laid off. Thousands of people in the last year have been laid off.
Yeah.
Right? On top of thousands of people who graduated.
Right.
The last couple of years. So again, to me, these are like obvious things. You're competing with professionals who have experience and the top level of people who are your classmates or your peers and your peer group. And every year there's another peer group and then another peer group. And then all the people who suck, but they're still firing arrows, at least for a little while. So there's just a lot of noise, right? There's a lot of people trying to get work. So again, part of that is of your self-assessment. What are you good at? What are you not good at? What do you need to improve at? Do you need to learn a 3D thing? Do you need to learn a couple 3D things? Do you need to learn other programs that will extend your skill set, right?
Let's and I love what Mike's been saying. So let's give the people what they want, you guys. People are like, yo, I got my pencil and I'm like wetting the tip of it, pause, with my tongue. And I want to write down and I want to add some notes to this. So maybe we could just kind of throw the ball around for a bit with like, okay, so what is the practical things that you need to do? And I'll start off by saying, and it doesn't matter what part of the industry you're interested in, or so you want to be a cartoonist, or you want to be a 3D artist, or you want to be a character designer, or you want to blah blah blah. I think the very first thing anybody should be doing is to understand the industry that you want to get into. And I'll just throw this out here. So I've been for the last couple of years been deep into the traditional publishing industry, right? I'm at Scholastic. Everybody gets that. And I know a bunch of people who don't have a subscription to Publishers Weekly. Like, how do you not know what's going on in the business that you're trying to sell books in? And I told somebody, I was like, because, news kind of trickles down. And somebody's like, yo, did you hear this thing about HarperCollins or whatever? I was like, oh, yeah, I read it in PW last week. You read PW? Like, how can I not? You know what I mean? So it's just those little things like, and if you don't know, Publishers Weekly is a kind of a weekly industry, like a trade magazine that talks about hirings, firings, moving around. It's got merges, who's at a new company, who got bought out, debuts and new authors who just got to deal with somebody else. Like, trends, all that stuff is important to know. And that's kind of like Mike was saying, back when I was kind of still like a comic book collector and trying to get into the business, I read the Comics Buyer's Guide. I read all those things. I had like a stack of those stupid newspapers in the corner of my house. Just reading, Mark Evanier has a new article. How do you not do that? That's kind of the thing that kind of bothers me sometimes. I'll ease off the pedal there. But, I think there's a little bit of give and take there because the modern person relies way too much on the internet to just think like, oh, well, I just read this tutorial. I watched this Proco thing. Now I know how to draw this thing. That's like such a fraction of all of this. You need to be versed on the industry you're getting into and like kind of subscribe to it. You need to be swimming in that. That's my first tip for your toolkit. Would anybody else like to go?
I love that. I love that so much.
Go ahead.
I love that so much because that really ties into what I was thinking about is like just having this, like I was focusing more on the curiosity and learning everything because you don't know what you need. Because it's like when you think toolkit, I think, okay, I'm going to bring one of everything. Like, it's not like, it's like I need my shark repellent. I need, maybe, I want to know how to 3D model. I want to know how to make web pages. I want to know how to run InDesign and Illustrator. And if it's something if it can help me and do anything to make my job better, or to give me an edge, or help me solve a problem, almost always, none of these things are time savers for me. They're, I'm not going to lie that somehow think that, I want to learn these things and it's going to really save my bacon. Sometimes it does, but there's so much other work and so much, I don't know, there's just so much cool stuff to learn. 3D, having an iPad, I know that's a big ask, or you're having an Android device, any kind of tablet, the idea that you can have these drawing programs and 3D modeling programs, all that stuff. All of it comes down to having these tools so I can do the things that AI can't. If I'm looking ahead to the next 5 years, the next 10 years, AI can't write a joke. AI can't create a narrative. It doesn't know. It hasn't seen it. You can load all the movies I've seen into it. It's not going to take away all the things I took away from them. Though what the culmination of the experiences and the curiosity and all the things that I bring to it is a thing that it can't do. And I think focusing on
you.
Yeah, exactly. Because our voices are distinct, though they should be. And, part of that self-discovery that Mike's talking about, self-discovery, self-examination is the self part. And, getting to know that part and finding a way to put that in your work in a way that isn't terrible, or, but anyway, I would say just embracing that curiosity and every day working on it. It's like exercise every single day.
Every day is going to the art gym. There was always a joke with Paul Ravoche about every day was going to the art gym to go up Art Mountain. And you never know what that day the weather condition is going to be. It may be nice and sunny at 9 o'clock in the morning, and by 5 o'clock, I actually had that happen, right? I was working on Ren and Stimpy, right? And everything was great at 9 o'clock in the morning. At 4 o'clock on Friday, they called us in. Everybody was let go, right? I'd worked for them for like a couple months, right? So, you cannot in today's world count on it being sunny all day, or sunny for 9 issues, or sunny for 14 episodes. You have to really look at it cold and realistic in that way. That doesn't mean that you're negative or that you're you're a doom and gloom. But the other thing that ties into what Steve, I think, is saying is, and that's part of the self-assessment, if you know you're not good at something, can you delegate it to someone who is good or who can help you? Right? Like if you're not I'm not good at building websites, right? So I'm going to have to hire I could take the time to learn how to build a website, but maybe that time would be better used for something else. That's part of your self-assessment. What is your skill set? What are you good at? What are you bad at? What do you need to become better at? Is it easy for you to be found? Is it easy for people to talk to you? Is it easy for people to see your work? Anything that makes it hard for people to talk to you or see your work is bad. Anything, you've got to put your work out there for free. It's a risk because of AI, but how else are you going to get people to pay attention to you? Now, I've been doing this, like I said, for 40 years. Is DC advertising anything I'm doing? Is Marvel? Is Warner Brothers? No. If I don't put my work up every day, no one's talking about me. Even I do 2 strips for King Features. So if you happen to be interested in comic strips or those particular characters, well, then maybe you would go. But King Features doesn't advertise me every day. I have a little blurb on the thing, written by, drawn by, right? So again, that's part of something I realize that I have to do every day. I have to make sure my work is out there. that I'm accessible, that I'm easy to get a hold of, that I reply to people in a professional manner. That's all very important. That's all very important. Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Just the thumbs up response.
You're right. And all these things are facets that are important. Some might be more important for a while than other things, but they all work together. So if you're
every project, I feel like that scene in The Princess Bride, where what are our assets? What do we have? If only we had a wheelbarrow and a Holocaust cloak. Like, oh yeah, it's like every time it's starting about what are our assets? So basically, what am I working with here? I know that's kind of like the self-assessment. What can you do that other people can't? Or yes, the fun part. I think that's an important ingredient, but also just I think the best projects people will ever do are the ones that only they could do.
Yeah.
No one else could do Leon. No one else could do Bone. No one else could do Airtight Garage. There's no one. It's like certain projects, like The Goon. Who else? Who else could do that but Eric Powell?
Right.
So,
and can you take a licking and keep on ticking, as the old Timex thing? Because that's really important. Some people get, licked, kicked a few times, and then they're like, oh, okay, I'm kind of done. I mean, like I said, I've been working in comics and animation a long time, and to get shit canned on a Friday, that was a new experience for me.
You found something new, right?
Right. I was like, oh, I've had read about that. I've had friends that had that happen to them. That had never happened to me. I'd never been called into a meeting with all the other employees and said, like, oh, hey, while we loved your work and everything was really great, flush, everybody's gone.
What do you think about that idea that some people have, like, they're really good at that one thing, and then other people have that, like, you're able to do the storyboards, Mike, you're able to do the comic strips, comic books, commission, like, you seem to have a varied skill set. Tom Zoller was in chat talking about caricatures, in addition to all his comics work and writing. Do you see having some people who can work in multiple styles or chameleons? And you could do that too. You can do the Bigfoot stuff, and you can also do, the American comic book stuff. Do you feel like, would you encourage a younger creator to diversify in that way or focus?
Well, I think it depends upon your personality again. I was always as in love with Warner Brothers cartoons and Jack Kirby as I was with Neil Adams. So I wanted to be able to do everything. I wanted to be able to do cartoony stuff, and I wanted to be able to do realistic stuff. So again, it was all based upon my desire. Now, I have heard people say, well, you just do the one thing and you get really good at it, and maybe that will happen for some people, usually because they can't really do the other things, right? Like, there's some people that can't draw cartoony or they can't draw realistic. So if you said, well, we need this very realistic, film noir kind of thing, they'd be like, well, I can't really do that. So in that case, if you're not as flexible, then you try to do that one thing as good as possible. But it does limit your opportunity, because in the beginning of my career, I did a lot of different things, and things that I didn't necessarily like or want to do, but I wanted work. So I did things, or I could do things, because my basic skill set was fairly broad. So I could do kids' books or cartoony stuff and realistic stuff. And I also think that it's pretty rare now where you find someone who just does one thing and is really known for it I think that was more common mid last century when you would have somebody like Jack Davis or Charles Adams, or a cartoonist who was known for doing a particular type of particular style, and people wanted that style, right? Because that's what it comes down to, right? If people want that style, right? So people really wanted Jack Davis's style his whole career. So he was very fortunate in that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you might have a style that is not going to be so popular, right? It's going to have a more limited appeal. If you can make that work for you, and you know the markets that's going to work in, and you can network in those markets, and you're aware of those markets and how to work within that market, then maybe you can make that work. But again, that takes a lot of work on your part to investigate that. Let's say you wanted to do, I don't know, dark, sort of gothic type of material. Well, obviously you're not going to do kids' books because they don't do that kind of stuff. You're not going to work for Scholastic because they don't do that kind of stuff. Do you know the publishers that specialize in that type of material?
Or you do it yourself.
Right. That's the other part of this discussion, is that unlike when I was 17, now there's all these other platforms. So technology is always a disruptor. As much as it can be a benefactor to people, right? So technology, halftone printing, disrupted engraving. And there were many master engravers before they could do halftone printing, which allowed them to do photographs and full blown illustration. There was not somebody copying something as an engraving, so it sped up everything. It sped up. It was just an explosion of newspapers and magazines. So AI is a disruptor, but it will have some benefits, right? Right now, it's mostly negative benefits because it is basically taking everybody's art and using that art because it can't make anything without sampling, right? Because it's not creative. It can only mimic. But I'm sure in other fields, I'm sure in film, I'm sure there's a lot of rote, not necessarily creative jobs, like probably, a lot of green screen processes where you've got people with, wires and all. It'll probably be great for that because it can just go through and like, okay, we just took all the wires out of that scene in like a second, right? But it is disrupting publishing. A friend of mine just sent me a illustration by Penguin, book cover by Penguin. It supposedly has a non-AI policy, but this cover was obviously done in AI because the hands look like a pack of hot dogs. So anybody now is going to be competing with that technology. Now, it can't be Jack Kirby and it can't be Mobius. It can't do a funny drawing, right? It can't do a great funny drawing like Jack Davis or Bob Camp or any great cartoonist. It doesn't understand it. It's not going to understand what makes something funny or unique. It's not capable of that, right? So you would still need an art director to go back over that and somehow see if you can, wrestle with it. So I think the other thing is that we have to deal with the fact that it's here, but what do you have to offer that's unique? And maybe you got to bring your level up. right? You got to bring your level up. You cannot just be sea level. You know, what are you bringing? And can you find a way of marketing your skill set? Like, I think one of the things every cartoonist should have is an account on Instagram, professional account, that allows you to look at your metrics. Now, even though it's not perfect, but it does actually give you male, female, cities, age groups, sexes, you know, and it does give you some feedback. And that is to a degree a barometer of how people are reacting to your work. Are they saving it? Are they not saving it? What are they saving it? Why are they saving it? You know, I'm not a big TikTok person because I'm not interested in looking at videos for 15 seconds, but I'm not 10 or 15 years old. All right. So what is your audience? What is the audience you're trying to appeal to? Right? If you're a young person, you're probably trying to appeal to other young people. But if you're a mid-career person working in comics or animation who just got tossed out of work because the studio merged and they laid everybody off, or your publisher just went bankrupt and they owe you money, what is your skill set? And how is your skill set going to help you go up that part of the mountain? Or are you going to fall off all the way down and have to start climbing again? Or like, hey, no, I'm kind of done with that. I'm going to go do something else, right? Because that's the other thing. I think that there's 3 distinct stages usually in an artist's life. There's the beginning stage, which if done well helps you get to the middle stage. And then in the middle stage, that's when you can really shine. So hopefully in the end stage of your later years, you're in a position to hopefully only work on what you want to work on, or only what you're interested to work on, or you can benefit. If Jamar works for another 15 years, let's say on Leon, then he would have the benefit of having who knows how many volumes of his work in print that can earn him money, right? Or maybe he has another series, right? So each stage of your career requires more self-assessment. It's something that doesn't ever stop, right? I'm assessing myself now. I'm going through a big stage of self-assessment now myself. So I'm looking at where have I been? What is my fan base? How can I monetize people who want to support me? That requires me to look at what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, what I need to be better at. If I'm not good at that, does it pay for me to hire someone who's better at that than I am, so I can put my time into another part of what I should be working on, a part that only I can do, that somebody else can't do, right? So it never ends. It never ends. Sometimes people come and they will say, do you want to do this? Or do you want to do that? And then you have to think, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. Oh, but I don't know. You know, when you really start looking at it, you start thinking like, well, that might be fun, but it's not going to really work for where I want to go. Mm-hmm. Is it gonna benefit me? And like I said, there's a lot of people in my age group who are having to do self-assessment because of the way the business changed. There's a lot of young people who are totally feeling like they're getting screwed now because they've gone to college or just graduated from college, and now suddenly it's like the table flipped, right? The table flipped on them, right? When I got into animation in the 90s, sky was the limit. They were trying to find as many people as possible. Lion King had made money. Everybody was investing a lot of money in it. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I clearly remember talking to my students and assistants, Mimi and Liang, the day that Netflix announced they were spending all that money to compete with Disney. Everybody was going to see who's going to be number 2. Disney's number 1. Everybody's spending money to be number 2. And I remember telling him, all you need is one bad quarter or one bad year, and all of a sudden everybody's like, yo, the pendulum will swing back just as fast, which now they've been out of college a couple of years is exactly what happened. So they are having to reassess where they thought they were going to be just from graduation. So again, it never ends. And I always say that if the self-assessment leads you to decide that you would rather do art as an endeavor, as a pleasure, as a hobby, as opposed to a profession, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I don't look at failure. I look at that as actually being really honest with yourself, because a lot of people don't really do that. They're not serious enough, so they sort of default in a way to being what I call a hobbyist. And there's nothing wrong with being a hobbyist, but you can't operate in that fashion and expect to be a successful professional, full-time professional, making your living from your art. Then you create an unrealistic situation.
Mike, I want to jump in real quick. I was thinking about everything you've been saying, and I'm always thinking about, this is like an evergreen topic. Our buddy Tim Fielder was in a chat who said, like, this whole conversation is going to be out the window in a year's time. We'll have to start all over again with a different algorithm for it. But another thing I was thinking about, and we kind of always go back to like the young student or somebody who's just about to finish college. And I've worked around higher ed for almost my entire adult life when I had a day job. And there was always this system shock to a lot of the art students who either got to the end of their senior year and just got fed this bad intel, or they decided to take Himalayan basket weaving for 5 semesters and then realize that this isn't going to help their, their end result. All these little like, oh my God, how did you let this happen to me? I'm not in control of my own shit here. Happens a lot with college kids.
Yeah.
And I think that another part of that is not necessarily trusting in the system or trusting in your advisors. It's still not really knowing what you want to do. And you're being somebody's like feeding you what they think you should do.
Here's your fast. Pull that out. That's what they're feeding you.
Well, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, now you're at the end of your 3rd year, like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get out of school. I remember, and I don't want to do too many old man chronicles things, even there's just even a shift in intention. Like, I worked at art schools, and when I was in art school, it was like a pirate ship. I've said this a million times. There are people like sleeping on the floor in sleeping bags, and you put your T-squared down and you go to the bathroom and you come back, it's gone. And the studios were always full. On a Saturday, you go in there to work on your stuff. There's people in there making T-shirts, there's printing stickers, or you know what I mean? There's industry happening because these kids were about something. Nowadays you go to your art department, there ain't nobody in there. You know what I'm saying? So there's also an intention there. Like, are you hustling? Do you really want this?
There's smart hustling too. See, there's smart hustling, and then there's just like busy time, right? So I always I try to break it down as simple as possible. Do you want to make if you want to make your living like me, which is drawing, right? I showed you that stack of pages. Do you want to make your living drawing? Where can you make your living drawing? What do you want to draw? And who will pay you to draw? Right? And now you can expand it to drawing on a computer, right? You can expand it to fine art, right? There's fine art. You can draw or paint whatever subject you want. You're basically pleasing yourself, but then you've got to find a gallery who's going to sell your art and take 50%.
Oh, we were talking about fine art.
Right.
Oh, man, that's a whole.
There's the other. That's part of the self-assessment, because some people are actually fine artists. They're not commercial artists, and their personality type is not going to allow them to navigate being a fine artist very well. So, again, if you're trying to make your living drawing, the better you draw, the more flexible you probably are. That allows you to, as Steve was saying, that allowed me to work in just about any style I can think of. I can probably do a fairly decent job, right? Because my drawing skills are very good, right? So now if you don't want to make your living drawing, you're more of an idea or a designer, or you can't sit down and draw 22 pages a month, or you can't draw 7 strips a week, then that honest self-assessment is going to eliminate certain paths and illuminate others, right? And again, maybe your personality is such that you would be much happier working for yourself, being a fine artist, finding another job that earns you a living, that allows you the time and the freedom to work and be happy exploring what you want to explore. And again, nothing wrong with that. I have other friends who have done that. That's what they do. They got a 9-to-5 job. They gave them a pension, things like that. They work at the post office or whatever. Fine. That's great. But part of the self-assessment is being honest with yourself. And if you can't be honest with yourself, and like I said, at each stage of the game, as you go along, you're constantly having to check in, be honest. Maybe you have a setback. Maybe you have a personal setback, a financial setback, a health setback. I mean, I had some health problems in the last year or two that caused me to reassess things, right? Maybe you can't do things the way that you did before, or you don't want to do things the way you did before. So it's hard to imagine all that maybe when you're younger. But I think anybody who's in their mid-20s starts to see the world in a lot more of a crystal clear way. And the fact is, and I know this sounds negative, nobody gives a fuck at any of these companies about you. They don't care. They may be nice people. You may get along with them. They may say, "Oh, I love the last issue you turned. I love that last storyboard. The last design you did was, oh man, I've never seen anything as good." They will still fucking call you in at 4:00 on Friday and fire you, or you'll wonder why your email is suddenly bouncing.
Right.
And you have to accept that. That's the thing that college sort of does, is because everybody's caring about you. Oh, Stacy is failing. We've got to try to find a way to make Stacy stay here so we can take all of her money. But once you're out in the world, man, you may have beautiful relationships. You may have friendships with people, but the corporations don't care about you.
Mike, let's do a pause for the cause. We have a couple of people who have questions. Steve,
sure.
Would you be a darling and go to the stars?
I would be.
I think
stars?
LG, the starred comments. LG has a couple of interesting ones.
Absolutely. This touches in something what Mike was saying. Let's go with this one. LJ on YouTube says, why link your art to your income? What if your income could allow you to do your heartfelt joy? So, I mean, in the artist survival kit is a check from another industry.
Steve, you have an answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in an ideal world, I saw that, Tom. I think in a perfect world, we wouldn't be worrying about the income. If income wasn't an issue, I mean, we talk about this talks of universal basic income and universal health care. Other countries don't necessarily have some of these issues because there's a social safety net that makes it so that you don't live or die based on on what the job AI just took, right? There's those considerations based on the system from a very North American, very United States perspective, very capitalist perspective, or at least mixed economy perspective. That's tough. I mean, I know some people who are incredibly creative writers. One in particular, award-winning sci-fi writer, got a job in education and hasn't done much writing since. It's been like a couple of decades now, because that job just requires so much creative energy that when they get back home, when their day is done, there's nothing left to put into the word processor. So I think it's if you can just be your joy, and I do feel like that's kind of the pushback against AI from the creative point of view, from the point of you're a kid and you're drawing, and someone comes up to you with a machine that says, "Hey kids, don't have to draw anymore. I got a machine that'll do that for you." Like a kid would be like, "But I'm having fun here. I'm getting better at this thing." I feel like AI stops that, can cut that process off and cut you off from that, maybe unlocking that potential, unlocking that thing. So much of what I've learned is because I've had to. And if something gets in the way of me having to do it, I was 3D sculpting something, and someone said, it was a cobblestones in the street, and it was repetitive. It was taking me hours. And someone said, "Wouldn't you just want to have AI do this for you?" I'm like, "No, look how much better they are now." They're like, it was repetitive, but I got better at it. And I feel like there's part of that which is lost through that. So I'm sorry to jump around get sucked back into the AI pulling the gravity of that topic. But yeah, I would love to not link it to my income.
And that's a person, going back to that last part about the AI, that's also a personality thing, right? That you wanted to sculpt every one of those cobblestones because you want that kind of control.
Right.
And not everybody would see that the same way that you would. Right.
And I know that it's the path. That's the path to getting better. There's no shortcut, and
yeah. And I also think that if there is if your personality is the type that you don't get any reward for getting better at doing that, right? Then you probably are not going to stick with it long term, because you don't have enough invested in it. I mean, that's the thing about the AI thing, is that if you can like have the magic machine that can make anything, make this and do that. Well, you're not achieving anything. There is no goal. Right? Your goal is like, I happen to say a series of words that made a thing that I'm pretty happy with, but you didn't make it. So yeah, I think you're going to get bored.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into I didn't want to uncork the whole AI genie at this moment. I was mostly talking about the process and what that shortcut it would affect the creative, the process of learning. And the idea, my goal is to be so good that AI won't want to learn from me. That's my goal. How about that?
You'll send the Terminator to your house.
What do you guys think about the LG's question?
Stephen Conley. Okay, so I think, and this kind of goes back to what Mike said a little earlier, I think there's nothing at all wrong with having a fantastic love of art and wanting to draw as a hobby, or financing, you kind of like buying more art supplies and having a studio in your house to work on stuff at your leisure, and you have a day job and you get release from that on the weekends or whatever. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's probably pushback from people around you, and we're seeing that change as the decades go by. When it was like a scarlet letter to want to be a cartoonist back in the day, and now it's like, what, you're so good, they should make a cartoon, and that's kind of where we are now. So I think if someone is really kind of itchy about making that jump, and when they say when your hobby turns into your job, it's not, you're not marrying the same person anymore. So I think that the answer to that lies in what you want from it. I don't think you have to, as a creative, need to make money with your art. That's not what I'm saying. And I think that's also counterproductive. The people that feel this pressure that, I like making birdhouses on the weekend. Now I got to go sell them.
Right.
Like, just go make your birdhouse. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And, there's a pressure that, like, I know people who just, like, everywhere they go, it's like they're looking at it as a social media opportunity to promote themselves. And they're looking at it as like, okay, I'm going to go do this thing. And so that's going to become, I started exercising with karate, and like somehow somehow I would be forced to turn that into a comic. Like, immediately that was where some people went with it. Like, no, that's just extra. It's just a thing. It's on the other side. But getting to the positive side of the question, LG's question, why link your art to your income? For me to do that was because making it that gives me an excuse to do it. Like, honestly, it was a thing where, like, if it was a social engagement, hey, you want to go do this? No, I got to do this thing. It's my work. It's my job. I have to sit at the table. I could be antisocial and continue to work on my comics and on my art because it's my job. I feel like that's one of the reasons why I encourage people to start a Patreon pretty quickly if they're serious about turning this into a career or really want to, because as soon as it's going to bring in $5 or $10 or $20 a month, suddenly you have a reason to go, I got to skip this social engagement. I got my Patreon customers to satisfy.
There's another great question. And you know what? Where were you guys like an hour and 10 minutes ago? We're trying to wrap it up. Everybody's like, ooh. Ooh. So Tim Fielder has a fantastic question. I might leave that for the end. But we have a new face. Cartoonist Jack signs in and asks, and this is the person I want to talk to. This is fantastic. Cartoonist Jack says, I'm a cartoonist who just made his first graphic novel. Congratulations. I'm at a fork in the road where I am not sure whether or not to also put the comic on Webtoon. Is that a good or bad idea? Steve Conley, the king of Webtoon. Defend your belt, Steve Conley.
I think it's a good idea. I think, generally speaking, if you're a cartoonist and you don't have a audience yet, if you're growing your audience, or if your audience is still in kind of a beginning stage, that's what that means is individual to you. If there's a lot of cartoonists, if they had my audience, they'd be like, thinking they're closing up shop. But depending on where you are in your growth as a brand, hate that language, but I think putting on Webtoons is great because it can put you in front of a different audience. I think it's also worth doing things like sharing a page over in Reddit and the art comics section and places like that. Put your work out in front of more people so they can discover who you are, and try to encourage them to visit your website or get onto your mailing list or something like that. That stuff's super important to build up your audience. So then if you've made your graphic novel and not sure what stage it's in right now, if you're going to kickstart it, if it's available on Amazon, and if it is on Amazon, make sure when you're linking to it, you use an affiliate link, things like that. However you're going to distribute your work, just get those email addresses. So congratulations.
You can network with other cartoonists.
Yeah, like you should be liking and subscribing to Pencil to Pencil.
Right.
Hello.
Right. One of the most important things for a young artist to do is to network with other artists. Like, sometimes people get jelly, or they feel weird, I remember a lot of people would say, well, I don't want to put my stuff online because somebody's going to steal it. At this stage of your career, if you're building your career, the more people who have your work, can see your work, and the more professionals that you know, that know you, gives you a greater opportunity to take advantage of opportunities that come your way.
I had a question for Cartoonist Jack, and I don't know if you have time to respond in the chat, and it's such a great question, but what is your fear? like where's the hesitancy of putting on a webtoon? Do you feel like that might dilute your graphic novel by splitting it in putting it in two places? Like I'd love to hear why you're concerned about putting it in a different place. But that was a great question. Okay. Also, Cartoonist Jack says, I'm also a part of Boston Comic Roundtable, which has been a huge blessing in helping me make this book. Sip of coffee for networking. That's part of my toolkit. I've been saying that since 1997. Network, network, network.
Yep.
All right, here you go. Cartoonist Jack is trying to get to the MVP of this broadcast. I suppose I'm more concerned that people won't want a physical copy. Steve, do you have anything to say to that?
Yeah. I would say that most people can't afford a physical copy, and they're going to want to sample it anyway. But also, I'd say that the people going to Webtoons tend not to buy physical copies. So if you're going to have it on Webtoons, the only people who will, the readers who you find on Webtoons, the ones who will buy your book are going to be the super fans who will follow you from project to project to project. It's not because they're going to be like, I love this comic. What can I buy? Can I buy it in paper form? Can I have it on my shelf? Can I have this totem? Can I have this thing? And that's a different energy. Webtoons is more about getting your name out there, getting the brand out there, getting the possibly getting the subscribers that come from finding on Webtoons. Webtoons is also pretty good about linking to Patreon. Not great conversion rates from my experience, and from cartoonists I've talked with. But no, I feel like putting it on Webtoons, as long as you make sure when you upload it, you don't upload it at print resolution. If you're really concerned about it, you want to make sure that you're the only source of those 300 DPI files.
I love it. And that's why Steve is the champ. All right, last question, guys, then we're kicking out of here. Mike, I'm going to give this one to you. This is right up your alley. You know our boy Tim Fielder. What up, Tim? Tim says, what do you guys think? And sorry for people who ask questions that I get to you. Sorry. What do you guys want? What do you guys think of the idea that the coming AI tools will allow artists to directly compete with the studios or publishing houses? Seems to me this tech will only disrupt jobs, but also the corporate sector itself. And before I turn this over to you, Mike, we also have to say, and this is something that I love about Tim, Tim's a futurist. Tim has been, not to say Tim's been waiting for this, but futurists are thinking about how can this stuff evolve? So Tim's whole deal, and I don't want to speak for Tim, is how can I fold this into my batter?
Yeah.
Not necessarily how is it going to take my job? How can I use it to my own devices? So, Mike, how do you feel about that question?
Well, I think this goes back to what I was saying before. The technology is, it can be a disruptor or it can be beneficial. And I think at this point, companies are aiming to use it as a disruptor. Individuals may decide that they want to use it as a tool, but Disney's not looking to use it as a tool. Disney's looking to use it as a way of saving money, right? All these big corporations were very heavily leveraged, are looking to use it as a way to save time, cut costs, improve the bottom line, raise stock prices, make things faster. I mean, I suppose you could imagine at some point they would say, okay, everybody who's a Star Trek fan, we're going to give you can buy the Starfleet AI kit, and that will allow you to have a chat GPT, and you can say, I want to see another episode of Next Generation or Original Trek, and I want this, and this, and it will make it, and it'll make a half-hour TV show, and it'll be like a fan fiction. I'm sure that's probably where all this is eventually headed, right? I think that's probably on some, if I can think of it, I'm sure other people have already thought of it, right? I don't know whether that would be satisfactory enough to enough people, because again, it's always going to be derivative. It's not going to be anything new. It's not going to be like if David Lynch did Star Trek, it would be pretty weird, and it wouldn't be like something else. And like Steve said earlier, the other thing about any of us as an artist using that AI thing as a tool, we bring in a unique combination of such random personal influences into the mix that it might work for us in a way, but I don't know from what I've seen as far as the drawing, which I'm sure will get better. I don't know. Do you feel, are you going to feed in all your stuff and it's going to just do like a bad version of Mike Manley or Tim Fielder? Or are you going to say, oh, it's just going to make all these buildings in the background for me? I mean, how are you using it? You know, I mean, there's such when you buy a cartoonist's work, it's like buying an author's work. There's something about me that's unique. There's something about JAMAR that's unique, about Steve that is unique, Kirby that is unique, any cartoonist that you like. And fans are buying that because they like that, you know, they like George Perez's way of drawing and doing things. Are they going to like a computer as much that can just regurgitate George Perez style Avengers issues? I don't imagine that to be true, but I suppose I could be wrong. I think that's ultimately, in the end, what will decide some of this is whether the public who is consuming all of this material made from AI or assisted by AI will be as satisfied by what they're seeing. Now, I'm sure some people are just, you know, they don't care. They're just eating their chips and they're watching it. And if it's whatever, they'll be happy. But I still think, you know, the fact that it allows you to make your own entertainment doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to end up being successful.
No,
and
but
that,
I mean,
not for us, but for younger people.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just going to say, for us, it's different because our tastes are completely formed. But for someone who's 8 or 9, coming into this world where this technology is going to be emerging, who's to say?
Well, that was what really like Tim's point about the YouTube quickly approaching the YouTubification of motion storytelling. And what that's really getting at is the idea that all this internet helped make everyone a publisher. We were all content creators suddenly, but we were limited by what we could create. It was mostly text. It was mostly grabbing a meme from here and there. Now this is giving people the ability to generate an original image, even if it's not truly original, and even if it's still like basically asking the chef at the restaurant, give me the special. You don't know what you're getting, and you couldn't recreate it if you wanted to, but you're going to get it, and it's good enough. It's generally a striking thing, or it's an assortment of things you get to choose from. But soon it will be a thing which will possibly be able to, you can have permutations of that thing, and it may be able to create a consistent likeness across time, and it's not just ripping off Zendaya like we've seen in some cases. Mm-hmm. But all the stuff that's feeding into these things, so suddenly everyone is going to be not only a producer, but they're going to produce content of X quality. Now, a lot of us, that work won't pass the smell test, right? We're going to look at it, we're going, oof, it'll be uncanny valley for anybody who knows better, but a lot of people don't. I couldn't get past the Clone Wars animation style. To me, that chunkiness was never a thing that I never found a taste for it. But a lot of people dig it. There's going to be stuff like that where there's going to be a style that's going to come out from a creator who has no budget. To me, it's not so much when everyone's a producer. That's when
no one's a producer.
Well, that's when the publisher's going to have real trouble because the only thing they'll have to fall back on then is they're going to have to control the distribution systems. So it's going to be, once everyone's a creator, how do you control it? You have to control YouTube. You have to control Disney Plus. You have to control the networks that get it out. And that's going to be where we'll probably see future choke points. That'd be my guess.
Man,
So we're going to wrap up, or we're going to sum up our
yeah. Come on, you guys are killing me. We had an hour and 30 minutes, and then all y'all show up for the buffet at the end when we close it. I'm trying to sweep the floor, y'all. What up, brother Mark Manley? Good to see you. Mark says it will have a similar effect that digital photography had on the field of photography as a whole, making it exceedingly difficult to make a living. Yo, word up, right? Because everybody's a photographer when I can take a picture of my phone, right?
Yeah, that killed all those newspaper photo departments.
Yeah, word up. All right, I have one more thing I was going to add. Thank you, Mark, for chiming in. I even wrote it down. My good buddy, I was talking to John Gallagher earlier today, and he says, "You know what? This is a great topic. Can I add something?" I said, "Sure, John Gallagher, because I won't take your credit." He says, "What you need in the art career toolkit is patience." And that sounds kind of weird in this kind of catch-as-catch-can world, but patience.
Ew.
And also, you have to define and refine what success looks like to you.
Which is part of that self-assessment thing, because it's, you may achieve something and which you thought that's what you wanted to do, and then when you're there, it's like, well, this is not what I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
This is not what I imagined would be.
This is not my beautiful house.
Right, exactly. and again, I can clearly remember, wanting to do this and then getting my first few jobs, which were not jobs I would have chosen, but there's jobs that I took because I wanted to get the work, right? And my personality was such that I was looking ahead. Okay, I'll do this because it's still gonna get me over the wall. It's still gonna get me closer to my goal of what I wanted to do. But there may have been other people who would have been like, no, I can do exactly what I want.
AI's coming for
us. So I think that constant self-assessment, and I mean literally, like, write your list down. What are you good at? What are you bad at? What should you be better at? Where do you want to go? How are you going to get there? You have to figure out how you're going to get there. How you're going to get there when you're 20 is different than when you're 40. If you're 40 and you got a family and kids in school, completely different set of overhead and problems and responsibilities than when you're 20. Do you live in a place that's cheap, low overhead? Because again, success is not the same for everybody. We've talked about this before. Livable wage is not the same for me at 62 than it was when I was 19. Mm-hmm. And I cannot compare those two worlds.
I love it. Steve Conley, last words.
Success is not the same for me at 32 as it is for... But I like the idea. Patience is great. Tom Zoller added alcohol. I think that's excellent.
When patience runs out, alcohol helps extend it.
Oh, yeah, it does.
But I think it's I loved it. I'm gonna watch this episode again.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to watch it to see what I missed. All right, with that, pencils down. I love it. I love this way to end the show, guys. This conversation is ongoing. I hope that's your pin, Mike. I don't know what that was. And this is unfortunately an evergreen conversation. And we didn't split the atom by the end of this episode. There's still more to talk about. And thank you for everybody who put comments in the chat or questions. Hopefully we'll get back to it. I don't necessarily want to do another part 2 episode to this, because we could talk about this forever, but I'm sure something else will come up. And if you loved what we did here, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you liked and subscribed to this channel.
Tell your friends.
Nothing but content, nothing but chef kisses over here, Steve Conley. So please like and subscribe. Hit that alert button so you get alerted when I put the signpost out. And if anything, Tom's always said, tell them risk is our business.
It's what the Starship's all about.
Risky business. I love it. All right, guys, we're over time. We're trying to keep it to an hour 30, but thank you guys so much. Please go back and watch the archives. If you like what Afrofuturist Tim Fielder was talking about, go watch his interview. We interviewed him last year or 2 years ago. I can't remember. We've been doing this for a while.
Go back in time.
That's right. Don't use AI. Just type it into the thing. It'll come up. So, guys, thank you so much. We will be here next week if the maker allows. But I would say before Skynet becomes active and we're walking along human skulls on our way to school, I would be remiss if I did not tell you to wash
those six-fingered Kirby hands.
I love it. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.